How's it going, everyone? And welcome to a fully rostered episode of No Excuses on YouTube.com with your favorite show host, Still.
Narian.
And Volsal, we're here to bring you the latest news and commentary on the video games industry for the week. If everybody in the video games industry weren't just holding their breath for the Nepotism Awards this year, which should be happening shortly. Unfortunately, they have not happened yet, so you'll just have to make do with whatever we can come up with to talk about on this day.
I
But
did
first of all,
actually
if you'd
look up
like
a
to-
date for those the other day, and now I've forgotten it.
First of all, if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw. You can join us in our Discord server, where you can get the opportunity to see all of the questionable things that we post in our various channels, if that's what you're into, and talk to the show hosts and other listeners to the show, and also find links to our side content, which is not on YouTube.
Yeah,
Yes.
for obvious reasons.
Very much
Well-
so not on YouTube.
It's temporarily on YouTube, but it never seems to stay very long.
Yeah, so MPP was done last week. An MPP episode is up. You can go watch it on YouTube for now. However, we found out that YouTube is just outright removing those episodes, so it's only a matter of time before that show gets cheated. I have no idea what it's doing to the main channel. So the current episode is backed up on Rumble, and I'm thinking we're going to be doing Rumble exclusive from now on, just so we can be more free about what we want to talk about on that show. Because there are some things we can't say on YouTube, because YouTube has editorial guidelines and is a publisher.
YouTube editorial guidelines. Totally a safe
Bots.
harbor platform.
Yes. So, on the stream today, I'm probably going to do something completely inadvisable, and I'm playing a bit of RimWorld, which is also where a good chunk of my gaming time this week is unfortunately gone. So, RimWorld, I love this game. And it's bad, because, let's face it, nothing ever good ever happens in RimWorld.
Are you using Randy?
I am using Randy. Well, I will be using Randy. I'm going to start up a new game. I might just do a crash landed start. So they've put out a new expansion recently, which adds all sorts of things along the lines of robotics or mechanoids, which are allegedly robots, but they have an awful amount of organic components. And usually they require you to mulch somebody's brain while it's still inside their skull in order to make a processor call for them.
So what you're saying is that a moral compass was not among the things they added.
Not whatsoever, no. It also adds genetic research, so you can make yourself a race of horribly mutated super beings. You can also make babies, and by extension, because this is RimWorld,
my.
baby skin hats.
Of course.
Because RimWorld.
Everybody knows in real life it's shoes.
Yes. You can also play a vampire, which is a thing. So yeah, I've had a couple of playthroughs. First one, I started off with the mechanoid start, where you start with a single colonist and a bunch of little robots that they can control. I did not ever manage to keep any other colonists except for that first one for longer than maybe 3 days. So, yeah, she kind of became a crazy robot cat lady.
I feel like a lot of people just use RimWorld to reenact the Holocaust.
I mean, yes. That is actually a thing you can do. I've also modded it, by the way, so I've got a lot more options. And with my other playthrough, which I've played, I've just kind of stopped on that one because I realized what I was doing. Is I started off with a clan of perfectly normal tribals, and then they started discovering the wonders of, worshipping the ever-changing nature of the universe, and flesh sculpting. And before I knowed it, I accidentally created the Cult of Nurgle.
For a moment, I thought you were going to say that you accidentally turned your map into Kenshi.
I mean, it kind of looks like that right from the beginning, so... Yeah. Even without mods, you can do all sorts of really wacky stuff with the Idolation expansion pack. You can make the Cult of Woke if you really want to. You're going to die very, very quickly if you do.
Because everybody's too fragile to do any work.
Yes. But with a few mods, you can also make, for example, a cult that aims to become part of a hive mind. Or, and actually, let me pop it over and I'll show a few of the options. You can make the actual Imperium. God, Emperor, and all.
Man, now I want to buy some 40k again.
Yeah.
Stop doing this to me.
You can make the Cult of Zinch. You can also
Didn't
make the
they
Cult of Slanesh, so let's not do
I'm
that.
more of a corn person, really.
Fire and murder. Mostly murder. So yeah, you can have a lot of fun with that. I haven't played any option involving the vampire mechanics yet, because it's all talking about they're nanomachine based vampires. So you still have all the
son.
yeah, you still have all the classic vampire problems and powers, but every now and again that your vampire needs to go into a death-like state for a few days to recharge.
Oh, that's from. Oh, there's one particular fantasy setting where it's a standard vampire thing.
Yeah,
I think it might be part of Vampire the Masquerade.
Vampire Masquerade kind of does cover the whole spectrum.
Yeah, they've got every conceivable type of vampire, and then some.
And then some. Where should I start? So, for
I'm
example,
beginning to suspect that the conspiracy guy in the Hildebrand quest line is actually a Malkavian.
ooh. So I'm not sure what kind of playthrough I'm going to go through this time. I think I might just let it happen organically. Although I could land in here and become a can't even talk. A race of pollution mutated super pigs. You can do that.
You're going to reenact that kids show. What's it called? Toxic Crusaders.
I never actually watched that one. I did
I
unfortunately
remember
watch...
it, but I don't actually remember anything about it. I just remember that it was a thing.
Yeah, sounds about right. I did unfortunately
I'm not
watch
really
Captain
sure what the
Planet,
point
and
would
don't. Could go into Mechanoid's Intrusion.
The only thing I learned from Captain Planet is that pollution is its own reward.
To be fair, those people did all sorts of horrible things, and they always got away with it.
Yeah, and they seem to enjoy themselves as well. And they just seem to do it for the love.
Yeah.
Really, they did it for the love of it, not because it would accomplish anything.
Yeah, there was only, I think, one villain who actually did it out of greed, and
Loot and Plunder did it to get money, but all the others just did it because they kind of liked it.
Yeah,
because my role in the great order of the cosmos is to pollute things. So really, you're just trying to stop me from fulfilling my role in the ecosystem.
It means every now and again you got to get hounded by 5 kids and a silver man in underpants, but beyond that, you get to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, nothing suspicious about that at all.
No, not at all, no. Yeah, 90s cartoons were weird.
Well, it's not really 90s cartoons, it's more sort of 90s hippie propaganda.
It very much was. I'm not sure what kind of... I might as well just make it easier myself. And go into temperate forest. There we go. Oh, hang on. Can't find my buttons. There we go. So yeah, unfortunately this game, it's kind of got the whole Dwarf Fortress problem where you can basically do anything you want at this point. Between mods and official content.
The problem... the problem of having too much freedom.
Yeah. Generally, you want to go into a game with some sort of idea of what you want to try and achieve. Like, that's kind of the idea behind the whole Idolation expansion, which is what this screen is it gives you restrictions. So, for example, particularly if you come down to the strong belief section here. Like, you've got the corporate overlords. You want, basically, your whole colony will rotate around the accrual of wealth and generally the murder of people who are not wealthy. You got dark humans, people who cannot live above ground. And if you
It's
come
me
down
in
into
Minecraft.
here, things get even nuttier. Like, let's just go and live with the mutant bugs.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. Wonder if I can make... I could potentially, like, if I go for something like, where is it? Tree worshippers or feral people. You're basically making a hippie commune. Inhuman Ravagers, that's actually just the Cult of Nurgle. That right there again. So you can do pretty much anything you want. You could make yourself a highly accepted super church if you want. You could become a full monarchy or whatever. Have fun with it. But, yeah, there's a lot of options now, and especially with mods, you kind of need an idea of what you want to do. Or you can go to create custom and fluid and just let the whole thing evolve as you go.
And then Randy will deliver you a shipment of milk.
Yes, sour milk, usually. But not always. Sometimes it's chocolate milk. So yeah, essentially here you just kind of pick a structure and then you pick a single idolation to go with, or single meme as they use. They're actually using meme in the correct term.
Oh, so we're Metal Gearing this crap.
Yes. You can actually Metal Gear it. You can make Senator Armstrong, that is an option.
No, I mean that they use memes that way in Metal Gear as well.
Oh yeah.
Like Twitter is a plot point.
Twitter is a plot tumor.
Like the Bird app by name? Or just
The-
something that is obviously the Bird app?
The thing that is obviously the Bird app. They don't name Twitter explicitly. Twitter had just come out when Metal Gear Rising was a thing.
I'm going to follow the path of hedonism. Let's just what could possibly go wrong with that?
There's this thing called the Eye of Terror.
And I mean, I could go with the Gestalt meme. That's we're hedonistic, but everyone wants to be part of the state consciousness.
Well, I mean, hedonists, transhumanists, there's not really much difference in practice.
I mean, that just sounds like social media addicts to me.
No bros.
Ooh, I could go study Bushido.
Did you hear there's another big crypto crash?
Again, what? Another crypto crash on top of the current one?
It's basically, it's not so much a crypto crash. It was like there was this crypto exchange called FTX that fell apart recently. And by recently I mean in the past 24 to 48 hours, and they had something like $900 billion worth of investments or something silly like that. But it was, as far as we can tell from looking from the outside, it looks like they were basically a company that was designed to increase its value and buy its own stock to increase its value to buy its own stock, and so on, until the people in charge became fabulously wealthy and did a run and let the whole thing fall apart.
That sounds like just, yeah, it's going to build up until it falls over.
Yeah, there's no value was generated at any point, and most of their holdings were in like worthless shitcoin.
Yep.
That they mined themselves, that they were trying to convince other people to buy.
Oh, I like that. There we go. Hedonist culture, party life mechanic. Everyone loves parties. The generated name is just the party. This is going to go completely brilliantly. I can't see what could possibly happen to go wrong with a group of people trying to survive on a planet while constantly partying. Now get some colonists who are not absolute garbage. You'll do. And then yeah, so that's basically been my my runs with RimWorld. It's just been nonsense and complete and utter anarchy. It's a rare thing when you can find a game that will, on one hand, let you build or turn your colonists into, machine gun armed killer robots, but also kill them with a gerbil.
A gerbil.
A gerbil. Especially if you go with something like the Naked Start or the Naked Brutality Start, where you've just got one naked person and that's it. That killer gerbil that will show up right at the start of the game, it will ruin your run. Because, yeah, okay, your colonists might fight them off, but they'll have an injury, at least a scratch, and no medicine, and no clean areas.
Tame it. You need to tame it.
Oh no, this is an angry Gerbil.
You can make the new RimWorld Minsk and Boo.
That is actually an option. You can make Minsk. I think his face paint's even in the game. So yeah, you can do all sorts of shenanigans in this game, but yeah, as much as it might be, it might let you build up every now and again. The game just says no, especially if you're playing with the Randy Random Storyteller. It just says no and ruins everything.
Have you ever had like a miraculously smooth run as a result of Randy's interventions?
I have. I've had one. I've actually managed to make it off the planet on that run, which is your end goal in base game. Everything went smoothly. I got all the resources I want. There was no overwhelming raids. There was no random mutant T-Rex that turned up and stomped on everything for the giggles of it. It was just nice, smooth sailing. It was actually rather boring.
One time.
One time. I have, however, had a group of refugees walk into my camp and, make themselves at home and use more materials and start helping build up the camp until they decided that they wanted the camp more and started murdering everyone. That's actually a fairly frequent occurrence, that one. I am going to claim this building over here and turn it into a party palace. So yeah, the other game I've been playing for my weeks, because last week I felt like death. Food poisoning is a thing, guys. You just no.
Yeah, you just kind of messaged us at the end of the week and was like,
I'm
yeah, by the way, I can't make the show.
Yeah. That was about the extent of the energy I had that day. It was just not happening.
I see Wanderer has shown up in Gridania again, along with their set of creatively named characters playing music. Barry White, Weird Al Yankovic, Avril Lavigne, Eric Clapton, Bob Seger, Carlos Santana, and Whitney Houston and Wolfgang Amadeus.
One of these things does not fit. Well, actually, a few of them don't fit.
I hear that new Weird Al movie is really good.
Yeah, apparently Weird Al dies at the end of it, and then just calls himself out on it. It's one of those documentary style movies, except it's so completely wacky and just makes stuff up out of the blue for no reason. And here's Weird Al on Twitter a few days ago saying, "Oh, you can't watch a movie? There's options. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge."
Well, he was more creative than that.
Yeah, he was. But that's ultimately what it boiled down to.
Well, yeah, that was what he was meaning, but that's not what he said.
No. So, yeah. I mean, good on him if he's willing to make sure that people get to see and enjoy his movie.
Well, I mean, I think that parody artist sort of lives a bit more in the real world.
Yeah.
Than, say, most celebrities.
Yeah, celebrity logic, yo. I have never understood it.
Well, celebrities are sort of not really a thing anymore, to be honest.
But they keep trying to be, and it's really sad.
Well, it's more that the concept of celebrity is so dilute now.
Mm.
Like, I mean, what's his name? The blue hair guy, Ninja, is a celebrity now, according to some people. But how many people have actually heard of him?
Yeah, exactly.
The only people, even as far as traditional celebrities go, that I hear people talk about are like the big actors, and that might be housewives that talk about.
But they're big actors from a previous generation. They're not new big actors. Nobody knows any new big actors. They're all the big actors who were big actors when we were growing up.
Mm.
Yeah. But oh boy, during the Johnny Depp trial was every housewife ready to follow that one.
Yeah. I hear he's dating the lawyer who got him out of that little jam now.
Because Hollywood. All right. So let's just commence the party palace. So yeah, the other game I've played a bit of and had a little good time with has been Dead Cells, which is, and you're gonna love this, the roguelike Metroidvania platformer game.
I played this one.
Yeah,
I played it, several runs of it.
they are absolutely
Is it worth it for
shameless
you?
with their crossovers at this point too.
Yeah, I was not terribly impressed with the video game.
Yeah, I like it. It's just simple. It doesn't go out of its way to overcomplicate things. It's just you fire it up, you have a run, you put it down again.
I really, really don't like roguelikes. Like, every part of roguelike spoils the experience for me.
Mm.
Like, Palace of the Dead is technically a roguelike, but the roguelike parts don't matter because you don't care what trash you get except in the very late floors.
Yep. So
But
yeah, most roguelikes I find, like, I used to be really into them, and there's only maybe a handful of them now I really actually do enjoy. But a lot of them, it's like they make it brutally difficult, and you only make maybe a tiny little bit of progress each run. And some runs it just feels like you're absolutely wasting your time.
yeah, like there are some runs that are just clearly a wash, and you're just not gonna make any progress or accomplish anything of meaning in that run.
Yeah.
And for those runs, I especially in roguelikes, I'm just like, nah, I can pass on this whole subgenre.
Yeah. Dead Cells, I at least find that one run you will always unlock something, unless you completely tank. But on the runs where you just tank, then usually you can get back up, and you're not going to get much further than the first floor anyway, so you can just get back up and keep going. But yeah, honestly it's a fairly niche genre. Like, either you like it or you don't.
Yeah, I just don't find them fun in the slightest.
Yeah. I also dusted off
Yeah.
a little bit of Elden Ring, which I need to
boy.
get back into. Didn't get very far, but I did start again. I had that shock of, oh, right, who was the first boss again? Oh, wait, that Uncanny Valley cat statue.
Oh, you mean the one you were up to in the crypt or whatever?
Yeah, right at the start of the game. You've got a choice of first boss. You've got that or the Beastman boss. The Beastman boss isn't hard.
Well, you've got quite a few choices actually
Yeah,
on who the heck you want for your first boss.
yeah. You can spread out a lot more than that, but that's as far as I spread.
Yeah, there's about 100 if you use that metric for what your first boss can be.
Yeah.
But it feels like it anyway. I guess technically you could go to the Khaled area and go into, San Francisco wasteland and do bosses there, or you could take the secret portal to the Royal Capital. There's a lot of options for your first boss.
Yeah. So yeah, you can go straight to Margit if you really want to. Don't go straight to Margit.
He's the first proper boss.
Yeah. Actually, if you really want to split hairs, the first actual boss is the Tree Guardian.
Well, you can beat him.
You can beat him, but yeah.
He's going to be there a while.
And one wrong move and you're paced. But from the little bit I have managed to poke around in, I did the Beastman, I did the Uncanny Valley Cat. But they've improved a lot of things about how the game works and runs. It just runs so much smoother now. It took them a while, but they finally got their frame rate issues sorted out.
Yeah, FromSoft is still a console developer as much as we wish it would prioritize PC. They just don't understand how to optimize for PC very well yet.
Yeah.
They're getting there. They're
It's not just that it's hard; so there's just a lot more work straight up. Like, because you don't have one hardware combination anymore. Well, these days it's more than one. It's usually a couple, but there's not just like a couple of SKUs for PC.
No. So it's a big investment. I need to get back into that game and finish it again. I'm glad I started over though, because I'd completely forgotten how all the muscle memory. It's still it is a great game. Apparently, there's DLC in the works too, and it shouldn't be too far off.
It hasn't been officially announced yet.
Of course, there's going to be DLC. What good does an official announcement do?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a given that any FromSoft game will have DLC.
The install base is enormous. There's no way they won't do DLC.
But yeah.
Yeah, I expect we'll see it announced at the Nepotism Awards, because that's just how it do.
I don't know. Do FromSoft normally announce stuff there?
Maybe. Seems like an ideal time.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how people feel about the Nepotism Awards at any point in time, though, because it's not an industry thing.
No, it's Jeff Keighley thing.
Yeah, it's just Jeff Keighley's vanity project, so...
Yeah. And let's face it, there's a bunch of people out there who get excited for it, but for a lot of people it's just apathy.
Well, you mean that there's Joseph and then everybody else?
Well, yeah.
Because he always seems excited, or at least certainly very sourced.
Yes. Oh boy, but we have normally by now we're starting to get the leaks out of the Nepotism Awards, and there haven't been any yet.
Well, I mean, that would depend on if there's anything worth talking about, I suppose.
That's a pretty big if. I'm just trying to think, is there anything else I can actually talk about for my week? And the answer to that seems to be no at the moment. It's just been a bit of a chaos time, reveling in the fact that I actually have this mystical thing called free time.
That's a lie. That doesn't exist.
I was able to spend a day doing absolutely nothing the other day. That was nice. And the other real thing I guess I can speak of is that it's come time that I had to retire my D&D character, the druid who couldn't druid. So that campaign just kind of fizzled out, so start a new one. But I am going to be sad to see that character go, because I swear he was cursed. Every time I tried to do anything even remotely druid with him, I'd just get natural ones the whole way.
Nature just doesn't like you, alright?
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Especially, like, the first time it really popped up was very early in the campaign. We were stuck in the middle of the ocean, our ship had sunk, and here comes this giant whale. It's going to try and kill us. I try to druid at it and calm it down and make it go away. I succeed in only pissing it off. Then here comes the barbarian, and he just goes, ooh woo, ooh woo, ooh woo, and suddenly he's fine.
As you do.
Because, yeah.
Are you sure it was a barbarian and not a ranger?
He was a bear. Well, at least he was a man who thought he was a bear. And as the campaign went on, he became more and more bear. He was a very strange character. So yeah, we had some good times in that campaign, but that one's over. So trying to move on, figure out what I'm playing next.
Did it come to a narrative end, or did it just sort of get abandoned?
Just kind of gotten abandoned at that point. Yeah, we've still got D&D, or one D&D looming on the horizon, and I'm very gratified to note that not a single person outside of Wizards of the Coast is calling it that. Not one.
Yeah, there's sort of a war going on in tabletop right now between the what are they calling themselves, the Bro SR or something, and
yeah.
The rest of the mainstream, because the rest of the mainstream are like enthusiastically trying to push like woke reworks of D&D, and the not so conventional faction and the Bro SR people are saying, well, actually, gameplay develops pretty organically if you just follow the AD&D rules, rather than having to put in hours and hours and hours of work ahead of time. So yeah, because the end point to which the style of gameplay, which is highly narrative, has gotten at this point, it has been sort of like its most degenerate form, which is it's gone from narrative to basically being no different from somebody's Tumblr diary.
Ugh. Yeah, I've seen those games advertised.
Yeah, so
Nobody
It's just-
wants to play those.
gatekeeping is a good thing. Always gatekeep. There are some people who aren't actually there to enjoy your hobby. They're there to take over your hobby for their personal goals.
Yeah, a little bit of gatekeeping's not a bad thing. You just gotta,
Yeah,
gotta know when to draw the
I think.
line.
Well, I mean, the thing is that gatekeeping can be done for different purposes. Gatekeeping can be done for purposes unrelated to the hobby, in which case it's a bad thing. But anytime gatekeeping is done in service of the hobby, there is plenty of headroom for it to be a good thing. Because people who try to become very deeply integrated in the sort of organizational side of a hobby, but aren't committed to it for its own sake, are extremely toxic to it typically.
Typically, yes.
Like, the thing with fans is that they have to actually be fans. They have to be fanatically dedicated to the thing that they're interested in. If they aren't, then they're going to be putting something ahead of it, which will influence it if that's their main priority. And we've seen this play out time and time again in every hobby these days. Like, I'm highly, highly suspicious of Games Workshop's new army for 40k, because they swore up and down, and I got this in person from Games Workshop, a rep that visited once, to that they had no intention of ever doing squats again.
Guess what?
Yeah, and now they've released squats, except that they're good guys for some reason in 40k. Like, they're just unabashed good guys for no reason.
That makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense within the scope of 40k. But it does make sense in the scope of their current corporate culture, because of their increasing urge to try and consistently be seen as denouncing the Imperium as fascist,
Yeah.
which they've been doing a lot of late. And in order to do that, they need to present an alternative that is not fascist, because for some reason they have forgotten what 40k is about. So they want a non-fascist alternative. Yeah, well, they want there to be a good guy.
Yeah.
That is their goal now, is to replace 40k with new 40k where there's going to be a good guy faction, which will, 3 versions down the line will be the woke faction as well, I'm sure.
Oh, most certainly.
Everybody knows the actual woke faction is Slanesh.
Yeah, but... Yeah.
It's woke in its own 40k way.
Yeah. Completely and utterly degenerate.
This is something that has been retread by very many people in very many venues, but the Chaos Gods are basically all representatives of progressivism. Like, you've seen the fat acceptance movement, right?
I wish I hadn't.
Yeah, that's basically they're Nurgle cultists, right?
I guess.
They want to wallow in their own decay. Then the gender benders, they're the Slanesh faction. The Antifa psychopaths are sort of like the Khorne faction, except without all the virtuous parts of Khorne.
Yeah, without the honour.
Without any kind of fortitude at all, for that matter. Like, there's just they're straight up the whatchamacallit, the sort of the Machiavellian infiltration types. They're the Zench faction. So yeah, the Chaos Gods are basically the forces of progressivism, but they aren't happy with being the bad guys. So now they're introducing a good guy faction to the game, something the game absolutely didn't need and nobody asked for. Like, when people asked when they were going to do squats again, it was a joke, because the GW rep that was visiting for whatever your club's event was would always react so meme-worthily to it. Because it was something that nobody at GW wanted to do it, but they couldn't say no because they couldn't just rule out part of the IP. So they had to give sort of incredibly Weasley answers to questions about squats.
Yeah.
But no, they've just sort of like straight-facedly done squats now.
Oh boy. Yeah, thankfully, at least when D&D's concerned, you don't need to listen to WotC.
Well, yeah, they're not like GW. GW actually produced resources for playing their game.
Yeah.
Whereas none of WotC's resources are even really that helpful.
No.
Like everything that they do are things that you can do just as well. Not everybody can sculpt models to the level that GW's artisans can, because there's a lot of real artistry goes into their designs, no matter what you think about their corporate practices.
Oh yeah, you
Their
cannot argue with the
sculpts are
quality of their
really
models.
great. But that's not something that's really necessary for pen and paper tabletop roleplay at all.
To be fair,
Like,
if you really wanted to, you could play Warhammer with bottle caps if you were so inclined. But
well, inevitably,
if you've ever played with somebody who plays that way, you know it's not the same experience.
Oh, it absolutely isn't. So
yeah,
it's doable, but it's just not the same.
And in tabletop, you've got an extra buffer where inevitably every single tabletop group will drift towards homebrew.
Yeah.
This happens little bit by little bit. First, you amend a few rules that are dumb, like 3.5's requirement for touch for healing is too problematic for the DM to deal with. And so, okay, touch that you can have a 15-yard range on it. And then you work from there, and you add little rule changes. And then you eventually get to a point where on one of your campaigns, your DM's just going to go, you know, most of this rule set is just, we can do without it. And we can write something better for us. And you get a guy that homebrews something for the way he knows his players like to play.
Yeah.
If you have somebody that
the argument from the BroSR faction, though, is that if you just slavishly stick to the rules, you can actually build emergent gameplay out of it. If you just treat them as something that you are obliged to work around. Like, there are ways of reinterpreting that, but that only works for the very oldest versions of the game before they tried to temper it, because as they tried to temper it, they tried to add in complications that got in the way. So it works for AD&D, but it doesn't work for 4th edition. Not that anything works in 4th edition.
Nothing in 4th edition works. But that's where kind of the whole idea behind 5th edition was just to keep the rules minimal and get it out of the way.
But that's sort of a problem in its own right. Like at that point, what is the system actually doing for you? Why do you need it?
They may have gone too far in the other direction.
A system that is too relaxed is basically unhelpful. It doesn't serve any purpose except to get in the way. A system that is extremely rigid can have a lot of uses because it provides sort of a real world type framing to work in, because the real world has a lot of rules to it. That's the thing. People think of the real world as having a lot of freedom, but in practice it doesn't. There are lots of things that you can't do because this is the real world. And applying a similar sort of rubric but with a different set of rules as would exist in a fantasy world is another way of adding constraints for the purposes of increasing creativity. So there's a certain amount of value to rules. It's just that the sort of half-assed approach that WotC uses these days doesn't really accomplish that goal.
Yeah. Alright, I'm going to call my week there then. Vol, what you been up to?
I am finding out presently that trust NPCs don't understand Super Bolide.
Oh no. To be fair, a lot of players don't either.
Well, that did not go as well as I'd hoped. I'm still alive though, so I'm going to call it a win. Since I'm only halfway paying attention. Anyway, my week has been pretty brutal. I don't have much to talk about because, you know, I'm in the midst of training new people. All the equipment is on the fritz. People are taking any excuse to not show up. We had Canterbury anniversary this weekend, on Friday specifically. The problem with this is that it meant that a lot of people who were supposed to come in on Saturday just didn't. They took the Friday off and then were mysteriously sick on Saturday.
Ooh. Mysterious.
So yeah, there were people who were on rosters that should have had a day off during the week that suddenly just had an extended long weekend, which always puts an annoying amount of pressure on everybody who actually fulfills their work obligations.
Yes.
which seems in the real world to be one of the least wise things that you can do from a pure pragmatism perspective, is actually fulfill your obligations. But yeah, so I'm tired and annoyed because I didn't get the long weekend. Why would I get the long weekend after all? The place's operation only hinges on me working.
Yes.
But yeah, so I don't really have anything to talk about. I didn't get to play any video games this week. That was not a thing. I signed on to FF once or twice. Didn't have really time to do anything. Not making much progress with anything. Didn't really play any, even of my mobile games that I normally play. It's just I'm too tired all the time because I keep working late. Like this week was a lot of really late nights. On the upside, a 10-hour shift of time and a half does have its benefits.
Yes.
Even if they aren't necessarily physical or psychological benefits, they are certainly financial ones. But yeah, so I don't really have anything to talk about, to be totally honest. Most of my weekend following when we normally do the show on Sunday was taken up by our preparing the episode of Mostly Peaceful. So yeah, I don't really have anything to talk about. My week was basically non-existent.
Ah. All right, well, that's short. Did you try
there's not really anything I can add. I didn't do anything except feel tired all the time.
Yeah. We did poke at least a little bit at the Pinecone events.
Yeah, but I talked about that last week, so
Yeah.
Because it's a 2-week event and it was
It is a
already
2-week.
running, so
And then in a couple of days, so yeah. I have to admit, I'm enjoying having Pinecone just kind of there. It's not a game you invest time in. It's just something you fire up for 5 minutes when you're not doing anything.
It's the can game.
It is the can game.
yeah, and FGO's on a beat week as well, so there's not really much for me to talk about there. Imaginary Scramble finished at the end of last week, and I just barely scraped through completion in time. I just skipped the challenge quest. I couldn't bring myself in my fevered state to actually sit down and work out how to do a challenge quest. This was a rather obnoxious one, which the obvious strategy was sort of like it was a money strategy, and I didn't have money, so yeah. So the story overall for Imaginary Scramble was okay. I quite liked it. It was better than some of the previous ones we've had recently, but I feel like it was almost trying to patch holes in the way they've done writing in the past, namely the fact that the Berserker class in general has become sort of devalued in a sense in terms of the sort of narrative weight that the Berserker class used to have, in terms of them being uncontrollable and basically unable to be communicated with. Very few Berserkers are like that now that are released into the story. There's always some reason why they're not like that. So Berserkers have ceased to exist. Foreigners basically serve to fulfill that role, though, without having the burden of allegedly being unable to communicate and then having to trample all over that burden. And that foreigners are just basically a risk to have around, because they represent the terminals being used by the outer gods to attempt to basically ruin the universe. So while they have a lot of power, they're a significant risk. And Imaginary Scramble is a story all about foreigner characters. It's not so much about Abigail, because Abigail's story is the Salem story, but it focuses on Yu and on there's a bit of Hokusai in there too, and on Van Gogh, and yeah, even a little bit of Mysterious Heroine XX, who isn't really a proper foreigner.
Okay.
And Voyager makes an appearance as well, although he doesn't get involved because he's also sort of an honorary foreigner, and that he's sort of like in the outer rings of the solar system now, so sort of gets to be an honorary outer god, but is in no way an outer god.
He's just outer.
Yeah, he's just very outer. But they do a reasonable job of making them sort of endearing but dangerous. They've taken a BB tack with them, in that BB is sort of ultimately a character who has humanity's interests at heart, but she's also a raging sadist, and is always trying to bring about the continued survival of humanity in the way that trolls humanity to the greatest extent in the process.
As you do.
She's a bad person. The foreigners sort of have that similar sort of attitude in that, like, they're just sort of like, even if they're acting as a force for good, they're an unstable factor who could bring about things that are unexpected and damaging at any point in time, and you will not necessarily see them coming. Which is sort of like the overall plot is based around this type of principle. And they managed to make a lot of characters that haven't had much screen time reasonably endearing, like the young Guifei really hasn't had much screen time at all, if any. I don't think she's had any up until this event, but they managed to do her character relatively well as sort of like, if Kirihime is the archetype for a berserker of excessive affection, Yang Guifei is sort of like the foreigner equivalent, in that rather than becoming obsessively in love with her master because she thinks that that her master is the individual she slaughtered by burning him alive in a bell in real life. In the case of Yang Guifei, it's that in her mind, the role of her master has become mixed up with her outer god master, and so she is receiving sort of instructions from her patron, but thinks essentially that they're coming from her master.
Right.
And behaves in ways that she thinks she's definitely acting in service to you. Yep, for sure.
Yep.
That aren't necessarily to your benefit in any conceivable way. So the foreigners in this case, they fulfill the role of berserkers in terms of their danger and instability without having to sacrifice we said that you can't communicate with them, but now we're going to break our rules and let you communicate with them so that they can be characters. So yeah, I feel like they're a bit of a saving throw as a narrative device in that sense, rather than really being something in their own right. They're kind of like, we're trying to fix a mistake we made with the way we wrote these other things in. So yeah, in a sense that's necessary because the berserker role has become so deprecated. But I can't think of any berserkers released recently that actually carried the burden of being unable to be properly communicated with, which is the way it was originally written, right? If you look at the way Heracles is portrayed and the way Lancelot is portrayed in the anime or the visual novel, whichever you want to apply, it's quite clear that they were designed to be basically incoherent as far as communication is concerned.
Yeah,
and most of the early ones are like that.
They basically roar and grunt, and that's about it.
But there are no berserkers like that anymore. Like, if working backwards on the berserkers that have been released recently, like we'll take let's just organize them by release date. You got Senno Rikyu, who is totally cognizant, Ibuki Doji, who is totally cognizant, Crimehild, who is totally cognizant, Sei Shonagon, who is like, her version of being a berserker is to just be a zoomer, like extremely zoomer.
That would make everyone else around you go berserk.
Morgan, who is totally cognizant, Galatea, who's totally cognizant, Brynhilda, who's Brynhilda, so she's totally cognizant as well. Kijo Koyo is a little bit mentally unstable, but generally totally cognizant. Musashi, totally indistinguishable from regular Musashi. Salome definitely has mental defects.
There's one.
So that's one. Mori Nagiyoshi, he's a sort of a bit of a Blood Knight character, always obsessed with a scrap, but totally cognizant. Arjuna Alta, totally cognizant. Xiang Yu, having him be a berserker at all makes no sense, since he's basically got a robotically logic line of thinking. Jean Alta Berserker is literally a toonie. Atlanta Alta, in her depiction in Apocrypha, is a berserker, but as she appears in FGO, she doesn't do anything berserkery at all. Nobu Berserker, totally coherent as far as Nobus are concerned. Paul Bunyan, a bit of a distorted view of the world due to being a giant, but generally totally coherent. Penthesilea, provided you don't mention Achilles in any way, she's totally cognizant. Cha-Cha, totally cognizant. You can go all the way back through, and there are very few berserkers who are actually berserkery. Like, until you get to, like, the release servants, they are all totally able to carry on a conversation, don't have any berserker-like attributes to them. It's really a deprecated storyline concept, and so foreigners exist to fix it. And they've done an okay job of it, because the foreigner concept at least has some narrative room to play, because it's like, well, who are these influences from the outer world who are trying to execute whatever their intent is? It's very unclear what it is that they're even trying to do. Yeah, it's sort of frustrating to see them have to band-aid their writing like this without resolving the original problem, but I don't have a suggestion for them, so
Yeah.
I guess we'll just have to accept it. I mean, the foreigner class is sort of off the wall, so people expect there to be odd things that don't quite fit, like Mysterious Heroine XX is from the Servant verse, so you can basically forgive that. Voyage is a special case. Mysterious Idol X Alter is also from Servant verse, so it doesn't count. Yeah, so generally speaking, I think that they're onto a good thing to replace the role of berserkers narratively, but that still leaves berserkers sort of sitting there, not like berserkers not really being berserkers at this point, getting kind of ridiculous, almost as bad as archers not actually using bows and arrows at any point.
Yeah. Like, you got them using guns, throwing swords, lasers, whatever the hell half of them use. It doesn't even count as a weapon. But
Yeah, the newest one, Minamoto no Tometomo, actually uses a bow, but also
one.
looks like a mecha though.
Okay. So close.
Yeah. I will post a screenshot, because I'm not exaggerating in any way that they look like a mecha. Here we go. Zenobia doesn't use a bow, but Zenobia sort of has Zenobia has swords, but also has these sort of weird flying things, which in her lower ascensions are like ballistas that she can make fly or something for some reason.
She has drones.
Yeah, basically. But then, like, a lot of the others are inheriting their archer status from elsewhere. Like Anastasia, not really sure why she's an archer. Bavanshi inherited her archer class from Tristan. She's not actually an archer, but she stole his Saint Graph. Nobukatsu is an archer because his sister is, and he's obsessed with his sister.
What?
Summer Ilya is an archer because she has a water gun. Seishonagon is an archer for reasons that are never explored in any way and have sort of become a bit of a joke. Orion can occasionally be seen using a bow, but he also just hits things with his club.
Yeah, Ryan's a strange case on the best day.
Santa Nightingale uses a gun that shoots syringes. Calamity Jane uses a gun. Osaka Behime uses a gun. I think Paris does use a bow when he is not throwing sheep.
No, he uses sheep.
He does use sheep. It's definitely a thing that he uses.
Just sheep. So yeah, the archer class is not made up of archers.
The archer class is definitely not made up of archers. Very little archery appears to take place.
Yeah.
So yeah, class is all deprecated. Like, it's just fully fledged meme at this point. Anyway, that's about the most stretching I can get out of that. Somebody else can do their week.
All right.
Well,
shall we take a break? Or do you want to jump straight into it, Ari?
It's only been an hour, so well, the show's probably not going to be very long because we don't have much to talk about.
All right, we can have a short one.
So let's go on a break now, and since it'll be shorter, and then we'll come back and we'll do my week, and we'll do Sarah's email, and we'll jump into the topics. Dokie. And we're back.
Yes, indeedy. So, for a little while, I'm going to throw the visual stream over to Ari so you can see his collection of trophies which we will never be good enough to get.
Well, you get to see my collection of trophies as I keep it here so we don't have to look at Viola's nasty rainbow-covered nail polish hand in the actual chapter select. But, Vol, do you have anything else for your week before I jump into explaining why this is a nightmare?
Not really. They did release another Fairy Knight in FGO Japanese server, Britomart, who looks like a mecha in her first ascension, and in her second ascension, she is very obviously scantily clad, big booba, silver-haired elf Onei-san, which is painfully ironic because Britomart in her legend is supposed to symbolize chastity.
Mm-hmm.
And is doing an extremely poor job of it, TBH.
Yeah. Oh. I don't know much about her legend at all.
Yeah, that's all I got. She's just sort of like one of those knights that goes on an adventure, basically. That's the short version.
Alright, let's get talking about this nightmare. So, my week this week, for work, it's been fairly busy with just normal work. People calling, people sending me pictures of products that I don't represent for, and our company hasn't represented for years now. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess, but it's always a bit of a mess. There's nothing too outstandingly bad about it. It's just what it be. So last week I had talked about Bayonetta from the perspective of my completion of the normal standard difficulty and the quick casual run through to get all the collectibles, which are the top 2 rows. As you can see, the trophies there are not very impressive. All during election night, while I was watching Steven Crowder's stream, I was set aside time to plonk myself down in my chair for it, and did the entirety of the expert run through, and I'm now working on the hardest difficulty, which is all I really care about. I'm not going to go back and do the full pure platy run through for standard and expert. There isn't even a pure platinum overall ranking you can get in casual difficulty. It just gives you a purple completion. You good job. You did it, and you get the little Cheshire.
Thanks for participating.
Yeah, you get a participation trophy. There is no ranking in casual mode.
You scum.
So I did casual mode to go through and be sure I got all the collectibles. I've got them all. I'm still missing one figure box, but that's from beating Rodan. Haven't done that yet. I'm waiting till the end of my my pure plat or my unlimited climax run through to do that. Unlimited climax is the Dante Mastai equivalent in this game. It's the series pet name for its hardest difficulty, like many series have. And this has been a nightmare. As you can see, my tendency to go out of my way to do it right and get a pure platy on every single mission has kicked in. The only one I don't have pure platted right now as I've been progressing through is the one I literally just did because I didn't get a high enough combo in a couple of the middle fights, and in the last few fights are the boss fights, plus the stupid gimmicky Malfast escape sequence where you got to ride on the back of a bird and dodge stuff that's falling on you. That's just going to take practice. I'll have to memorize it. And I haven't done that yet, obviously. So this mission isn't done yet. But I did do it for all the other ones. And hoo boy, does the game's problems really shine in Unlimited Climax when you're trying to get the pure platies. Namely, especially in Viola's levels. So I'm actually going to be booting up one of her levels here in a minute. We can go ahead and do that. And this character is terrible for a lot of reasons. It's not as bad as some people are making it say, but it certainly isn't good. I bemoaned how stupid Cheshire was last week, but one of the main ways you get combo points during a battle is by triggering torture attacks, and to do this, you need to send the enemies into a spin state or a stun state. And the only way you're going to do this is, and it only counts if you hit them hard enough to do it, and Viola has one move that can do it, and that's Cheshire's spin and tail. And this is unfortunately not going to be a great mission to show off all this with, because I can only do damage during witch time in it, so I may back out of this and go to a Bayonetta level instead to show you a bit more of the other problems. And getting Cheshire to do his stupid tail swipe is totally RNG. There's nothing you can do about it. And if the fight's combo mechanics or a combo requirement is too high for a pure platinum and Cheshire just doesn't give it to you, just kill yourself. That's another thing. For some godforsaken reason, Kamiya is just allergic to the idea that you can... hang on, I'll just retry this immediately, as you'll do a lot in these special missions. You can retry these missions, but in normal verses, you can't. If you're not meeting the score requirement, you think you're going too slow, or you get hit, the only thing for you to do is to stop hitting buttons and just die. There is no quick retry. I don't know why Kamiya is allergic to this idea, but he has been for, like, ever. So, yeah, that's been a thing. And having to get the pure platy with just that is a problem. And then you get the gimmick levels where you can't just die. You have to hope it has a checkpoint right before the gimmick. Otherwise, you can't return to title screen and continue. You've got to do chapter select and redo everything before the gimmick section to practice the gimmick section. I don't know why he's so obnoxious with his checkpointing. And as you can see by me getting hit by what looks like easily dodgeable things, Viola doesn't have a dodge that triggers witch time. And the particular trigger or gimmick for this particular battle is you can only do damage during witch time, which means you have to land a perfect block. And the timing on it is tighter than Royal Guard and Devil May Cry 4. As you can see, you got a pretty good block there. It doesn't care. I got a better one there, but it was not good enough. It wasn't perfect, so I got the Baby Witch time. Can't do any damage with that. That was a perfect one. It was pretty much frame perfect there. So we got to really hammer on the damage while we got some time, and now we can't do damage anymore for this challenge. And Viola's challenges are all like this. And you can see, because I tried to wait till the last second, got hit again. And we restart.
I'm sorry, but I can't see anything except that lipstick.
Yeah. So let's flip to a Bayonetta level. And
sucks the eye like a loose tooth.
Yep. So that's another reason Viola's particularly bad in all her missions. You just got to practice and learn the enemies and get lucky with your timing. So let's start a mission or a section I missed a few pure platies on. And Bayonetta has the opposite problem. I have blonde hair Bayonetta outfit on because I do. It doesn't look particularly good, but none of the outfits do. So that's what it is. And anytime you go to chapter select, you have to sit through the loading screen to the chapter select and the loading screen to the mission. And then you have to run all the way to the encounter like this. So my encounter's in this room up here. I had to run all the way from the bridge. Oh, it's even further. Okay. I got to go through this room that doesn't do anything because there's nothing in there except a little treasure chest off to the side that you'll get once and never have to use again. So just waste your time there to get to the room with the actual encounter. Now, this is why Bayonetta's missions are a pain in the butt. They're a pain in the butt for entirely different reasons. So, you'll notice there's a little dude over here who is currently zipping around and attacking. So I want to trigger witch time, and my dude's dead, and then blow up my spider. Because that is far and away the best way to start every fight, and put the thing in torture attack. And then you just sit here and try to keep your combo up, which I didn't do. So now, because I know I've screwed it up and I dropped my combo, I can just wait for this guy to come kill me. And I have no other option, because unless I want to go through 3 loading screens, I have to just let this guy finally figure out he wants to hit me. And this will kill me, and I can retry the verse. Now, that doesn't take a while, but I don't understand why there couldn't just be a retry verse button, because it's going to plonk me right back in the verse. Like, yeah, the verse has already started. I actually want to change my demons out for this. I don't want Spider for this one, because there's only one little enemy. One Gamora instead. And there is no reason at all for it to do it like that, but it do.
Well, I mean, the reality is that there might be a reason that it's like that. They might have spaghetti coded something early on enough in the process that they decided it wasn't worth going back to fix.
Yeah, but yeah, I've been hit, so I just gotta wait on the board to kill me. And you'll notice when I get down to just the boar, if I still have my bat up, I am literally just going to spam one move. Whatever move your demon has that does the most hit stun, to stun lock the boar. Because I cannot allow that thing to move. It when you're trying to do this as fast as possible. And the timer requirement is the real reason I do this. Not the combo, not the no damage, but the time requirement. Because every flippin' encounter has to have a time requirement. So yeah, I'm going to go into Witch Time, and then we're just going to do the thing that has the most hit stun, that builds the most stun on him. I'm going to chain dodge through that. And I'm going to resume just shooting laser beams at the pig until he gets his act together here. I need to be sure to use the torture attack before the stun wears off. And every single encounter goes this way. It makes it not very interesting, because you notice I'm not doing Bayonetta things for most of this fight. I'm just sitting here letting the demon dance just for variety. We'll have Gamora shoot the big laser beam and see what that can do here. You notice most of that was not me. I dodged a few attacks to trigger Witch Time, but the rest of it was all my monsters. What part of that is like playing Bayonetta?
You're kind of missing a lot.
And that's
of
what you got to do.
It's Pokemon.
It's Pokemon.
That's what you got to do to pure platty stuff on Unlimited Climax, because the time requirement is just too strict. You cannot do enough damage unless you abuse the demons. And the only reason I'm doing this is because I have a bizarre obsession ever since Dino May Cry that if I'm going to criticize an action game, especially a character action game, I'm going to know what I'm talking about, dang it. And I've got a lot of shoes with this game. A lot of them. So, well, I don't know what the next verse is. I think it's that one in the effing hallway. The one where I can't use demons. And even the ones you can't use demons aren't safe from not playing like Bayonetta. They play more like Bayonetta, but there aren't very many of them. This encounter coming up is one of the very few ones where you can't use demons. Okay, stop. Heal walking. This is another thing. Forced RP walking is all over the place in this game.
But why?
I don't know, but you just are forced to RP walk. And then there are big puzzle sections. You know, DMC5 did away with all of this. The puzzles became very minimal because they knew what people were here for. They realized what their selling point was and were like, okay, we did the silly puzzles. Nobody wants to go through the forest that returns you to the start of the room if you get caught by the dudes after you do an extra fight. Nobody wants to have to do that again. So we'll just make it about the pure combat encounter. Now, I'm fortunate here in that I can come here, and I can flip the record over, and I can hit Witch's Respite, and that'll give me a save point. So if I quit out, return to title screen, and then hit continue, I only have to go through one loading screen to retry this fight if I screw it up. So you can't summon demons in this one, but you're just going to use your overpowered Demon Masquerade attacks that were advertised in the trailers, if you remember. Which, for this one, involves just spinning around a lot.
Honestly, it feels almost like they're converging back on, like, Kingdom Hearts 2, press triangle to win boss fight.
Yeah. And there are a lot of inputs going on. Like, I'm doing circle motions and crap with all these mechanics, but...
I know, but those were all, like, encounter-specific animation chains that you would do. So, ultimately, it didn't have anything to do with your play when you're doing the... Like, if you compare Kingdom Hearts 1 to Kingdom Hearts 2, in Kingdom Hearts 2, you would fight the boss normally for a little while, but after that it would all be about hitting the context-sensitive buttons over and over again, whatever they might be. And
yeah.
you didn't really feel like you were engaged with the boss fight anymore. Because you weren't using your character to actually fight?
Yeah. So, even though Bayonetta 2 has Umbran Climax, I still will recommend that game over this game every single time. Because Umbran Climax allows you to delete one encounter every 4 or 5 encounters. Unless you cheese it with Magic Lollipops. Which you can do if you really want to. And is recommended if you're trying to pure play it, because there is no easy quick first select or checkpoint select in Bayonetta 2 and Bayonetta 1. So you'll want to. But yeah, and as you can see, from my score rank of 15th on the United States server, there aren't that many people doing this. Like, this is not a perfect score. I don't have pure platinum on this mission yet. Like, I'm ranked 15 with 3 golds for the boss fight and his 3 phases, and still got that one in the hallway that's still a regular platinum. And I'm ranked 14 on the US server. People aren't that engaged with Bayonetta 3 to take it any further, because the gameplay just isn't very good. You just keep... because you have to sit there and control those demons, instead of, actually playing Bayonetta. So, it is unfortunate that is the way things are. But that's kind of just the game. And Viola's gameplay is even worse. I'm not going to attempt to do it, because the Viola spot that I'm on right now is a challenge mission that has special rules, so I can't really demonstrate just how stupid her thing is. But remember, one of the requirements for pure platinuming things is to not take damage. And remember how Viola's dodge is trash and doesn't activate Witch Time. Well, guess what? When you throw out her tool that gets her the most combo points, which is Cheshire, and you need to, guess what you can't do? You can't block.
What?
Yeah. So the block button is tied to whether your sword is equipped or not, and to throw the sword out, you have to, or to summon Cheshire, you have to have... I don't actually care if I get hit here, because I just want to get past this fight. Because you have to throw the sword to get Cheshire to come out.
Yeah, Cheshire comes out the little dangly thing on the sword.
Yeah. And it comes out wherever you throw the sword, on top of all kinds of extra nonsense there. So I'm just gonna breathe fire on the pig to kill it quickly, and just let Gamora laser it. But yeah, so she has no way to defend herself. So you're reliant on items like Puella's Butterfly, if you remember that from the previous game, that lets you have your magic meter drain continuously to have a shield that would take 1 hit for you. Or the Moon Malaka, which gives you Royal Guard, but you have to press the direction the attack's coming in. You can't just hit a button. So it's in a way harder, but the timing's a little more forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be frame perfect with it to trigger Witch Time with it. And remember, the combo thresholds are no joke. You have to really get your combos straight. And if you mess it up and don't trigger Witch Time enough, which gives you a 1.55 times multiplier on all of your scores, while you're in it, you aren't gonna have enough combo points to get the pure platy, or get the platinum medal for combo. It's just not gonna happen. You don't have enough. You need to trigger Witch Time, which means you have to deal with her stupid, hard to time block mechanic, plus having Moon Malakala equipped, because it's the only option I can find for this, and hoping Cheshire does the high combo point value moves. Because remember, you have no control over what that stupid cat does. If the cat even attacks what you want it to begin with, which it usually doesn't.
It'll just go... resent the cat.
I do. Cheshire is... Cheshire drives me up the wall. I hate Cheshire. I hate that stupid cat so much. So yeah, it's just, the game has a lot of problems. I don't have much to go into with Pure Platy beyond that, because I haven't finished it. I haven't done the Rodan fight, and I get the feeling the Rodan fight's going to be just as bad, where it's just going to be, can you combo him with Demon Slave, or get a Demon Slave ability to come out and then go back to dodging.
Do you at least know which character you're using? Or do you get to choose?
You get to choose. I'm
okay.
Pretty sure. All the extra missions let you pick the character you want to use.
So does that mean you're going to have to fight Rodan with Cheshire at some point in order to complete completion?
The game does not track separate characters. It only cares about your overall top score. So no, I don't have to. I don't have to fight Rodan with the effing cat.
And before you get there and you find that there's actually a super secret stage for 100% completion that does require you to do that.
Oh, no. The super secret stage is you just fight Cheshire.
Yeah. And the game is incredibly easy if you're not going for pure platies. Like, even on Unlimited Climax, you've got a good, generous 5 or 6 hits you can take before maybe the bosses for their heavy attacks, you can take like 3. But the only real problem comes in when you're trying to meet time and combo requirements, and this means you gotta deal with the time and combo requirements, and also not take any damage.
Ick.
Because otherwise, damage just doesn't matter in this game. The game doesn't care if you take damage or not. So I'm just gonna let them murder me, and sometimes they just take forever. Because I could go through a bunch of loading screens, or I could just let them kill me because I took a hit. And as I mentioned before, they have not invented will not attack until it is on screen, and will prioritize moving to on screen before committing to an attack technology yet. That is a Devil May Cry innovation they just ain't got. Oh, dang it. I knew that attack was coming off screen, but I still got hit. And trying to do that...
As long as that doesn't actually manifest in Orlando archers, it should be fine, right?
Yeah, it's not so bad when you got sound and you can hear it, because you see there's a very visible flash before every single attack to tell you when you should be prepping your dodge, although it is not accurate to when you should push the button. It just tells you, hey, there's an attack coming, you should probably get ready. It doesn't tell you anything else beyond that. So yeah, I've not really having a lot of fun going through and getting the pure platy with it like I would with many of these types of games, which is a shame because I really like these type of games. I dodged you, you idiot. And that's the other thing. The game isn't clear about what you can and can't dodge cancel out of. This isn't like Devil May Cry. And Devil May Cry 5, there is no enemy that has an attack that's just so badass that you can't royal guard it. You can royal guard anything if you're good enough. The timing may be tighter for the bigger attacks or have a wonkier tell, but you can do it. In this game, you have no idea what the timing is for dodging stuff or dodge canceling out of, if you even can, because there are exceptions to the rule where you just can't dodge out of it.
Right.
So I've been having it out with this game, trying to do this. Come on. And yeah, it's been a very frustrating experience, but I'm almost there, as you saw from the trophy logs. I've just got to clean up this mission, and then I've got the 12 levels in Paris, and then the 2 final boss levels, and then I'm done with going for the platies. And then I can just beat the game. And then I can just beat Rodan, and it's done.
Yeah. I always want to like the Bayonetta games, and there's a lot in the previous 2 in particular I did enjoy, but there always seems to be just something a bit off about them.
Well, they're more mashy. As you notice,
yes.
Like when you were watching me play in Devil May Cry 5, I was not mashing anything, and I was using lock-on and turning it on and off a lot. I have not touched the lock-on button once while I've been playing tonight.
Oh, there is a lock-on button. I just hadn't even noticed.
There is, but it's totally useless. All it does is get your camera in a position where you can't move it.
Right.
And yeah, I want to give Bayonetta more recommendations to people because it's a good, in air quotes, video game franchise that just has so much potential that never gets lived up to fully. Like, there's always some weird jank with it.
Yeah, well, the thing is with that genre, though, is that you have to either get it almost perfectly right or just not bother at all, because the gap between one that is really good and one that is mediocre and misses a bunch of beats seems to, in practice, be incredibly large gap by the time you get above, like, normal difficulty.
Yeah. And,
like, I mean, if Platinum wanted to stick to doing things like Revengeance, that seems like it would be totally fine. Because you've got a lot of latitude with that. People aren't there because of the ultra precision gameplay.
No, they're there for
the memes.
Like the good old days after 9/11.
Oh no.
But this just it's not the worst character action game I played, but it isn't Bayonetta. And even in these sections where I'm just playing as Bayonetta with no demons, it's just like, it just feels a little clunkier. The way I have to play to meet the pure platy requirements is just too degenerate.
Too cheese.
And it relies too heavily on me restarting because of cheap shots I didn't see. Or, how did that not count as a dodge? And that's something in this game that I also notice. Like, how did that not count as a dodge? I clearly input the button. I heard myself input the button. I felt myself input the button. I saw Bayonetta start the dodge, but it didn't count yet. I have no idea where the iframes are on the dodge, but they don't start until way later in this one. And you're basically relying on bat within, which is, if you technically took the hit, but hit the button on the frame of the hit, it'll give it to you anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how I can recommend it to people that are into character action games when there are better alternatives. But we just don't have a huge pool of good ones.
No.
Like, the really good character action game pool is very small. You basically have Devil May Cry, and that's it.
Yeah.
I have to say, Bat Within is an incredibly silly name for a skill.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you might see me accidentally pull it off here. If you screw your dodge timing up by just a frame and you get hit technically, the game will just forgive you and say, "Oh, never mind, it totally counted. You got it."
Yeah, we'll let you have that one.
Yeah, we'll just give it to you. Yeah, like that.
There you go.
Also, activated witch time when all the enemies are a billion miles away from me, and I'm not getting double points.
I'm actually trying to think if there are any other character action games, and I honestly can't think of any. Bayonetta, Devil May Cry.
Revengeance technically counts, I guess.
Technically, I guess, but yeah.
You can do some pretty flashy stuff in combos if you really get to know that combat system, but like all Platinum games, it's super mashy.
Yeah.
Like, the game doesn't expect you to learn those and tries to provide difficulties where you can, but it just do not matter very much.
Wonderful 101 when you're not fighting the controls.
That's another Platinum
Platy game. I love that game, but oh boy, is it jank.
Oh, dang it. I just screwed that up. Because I knocked them too far away, they're not all in the combo anymore, so I just gotta take the hits and die.
1 sec.
Yeah, I want to love these games. I want to love everyone that comes out, because there's a little bit in them that I like when I'm not trying to go for pure platy. Like, if the time limit and the damage limit were not so, or the combo limit were not so strict, and I could do more creative stuff, that would be nice, but they're just not. Because they are the way they are, I have to do this super degenerate garbage gameplay. Which I don't want to do. But the game says no. Also, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how he wasn't in my combo, but okay. Sure, video game.
Reasons. Just reasons.
So yeah, that's Bayonetta 3. I'm going to finish pure platinum the hardest difficulty, just so I can say I know what the heck I'm talking about. And I'm in the top 20 on the leaderboard for every single mission, and I'm number 1 on some of them. Like, nobody is pure platinum in this game. Nobody cares that much. And that's really telling, because even Bayonetta 2, with all its Umbran climax shenanigans, people wanted to pure platinum that game still.
Yeah. Because Bayonetta 2, despite its jank, was just fun.
Yeah, and on these leaderboards, I'm consistently, a whole week and some change after launch, able to get top spots on leaderboards. That shouldn't be happening. So yeah, it's a mess. It's also hard to do this without sound, which I've been doing throughout the whole show. So that's because enemies can attack you when they're off screen. You need to be able to hear when they're attacking. So not really something I can do while on the show when I'm stuck on a point like this, where I'm in a hallway where I gotta keep them all in line of sight.
Yeah. Alright, anything else about Bayonetta 3, or is that about it for your week?
No, this is all I did for my week. I didn't watch or read anything of note.
Yeah. It's a shame. Like,
no.
I was going to wait on your opinion on Bayonetta 3 as to whether or not I'd get it or not. At this point, I might get it, but I'll just wait for it to be on special. Like, deep discount.
Yeah, it's fun to play, and there's the story. I talked about how terrible the story was last week.
Yeah.
The story's a whole nother can of worms. It's so bad I don't even mind spoiling it. Like, they have trashed the Bayonetta lore with the story.
I thought the first game did that.
Well, they all deal with time travel nonsense against their own better judgment.
Yes.
So,
and they really should stop playing around with time. They play around with it anyway.
Yeah. But,
yeah. All right. In that case, let me switch the stream back over.
Yep, I can kill my stream.
So Ari can.
I just wanted to demonstrate how degenerate the gameplay is with Bayonetta. I couldn't show you a good Viola example, unfortunately, with the cat just running off to.
Yeah, that's I think is a really big oversight. Like it's a game about, well, at least on paper anyway, it's a game about building up your skill and getting good.
Yeah, I wonder how that happens when you design a game and then most of your systems just get made redundant by the way you're obliged to play it. Like, how do you end up releasing that?
Yeah, you can't get good when you're relying on an AI companion who just goes off and does its own thing sometimes.
Yeah, it's really baffling to me when it comes to score requirements and time requirements, because very clearly they must have tested that these times were doable if you use all the most degenerate methods. But they apparently didn't go as far as to figure out whether that was a good idea or not.
All right. We have an email, don't we?
We do have an email.
I don't have the email box open, Fern.
I do have it open. So I will read it, because I don't trust you people to read English anyway.
English is a very silly language.
You disappoint me every time I expect you to do some reading. My goodness. Anyway. This email is from our good buddy Serithus. Dear No Excuses, apparently I'm keeping my tradition of never playing a real JRPG, only JRPG parodies. The makers of Cthulhu Saves the World and Cosmic Steer Heroine decided to make a short, cheap game where the girls of Shakespeare-obsessed drama club are also moonlighting as magical girls. At one point they start to wonder why they have to teleport to dimensions that are reenactments of various plays. Romeo and Juliet, for example, gets attacked by a giant mutant plant, and despite that level featuring a lot of tentacles and wines and magical girls, there is no lust meter. What this game has is a ye olde English to modern English translator, and vocals and the map exploration music. All in all, this is a cheap, fun little game if you want to entertain yourself for a few hours. The Loathing guys, masters of marketing, just released their second standalone game, Shadows over Loathing, with absolutely no marketing or announcement or anything. I haven't tried it yet, but after West of Loathing, I'm sure it will be a blast. What I have tried is the Unity port of Doom, the one you can buy on Steam. They're adding some of the more influential mods to their add-on section after more than 10 years, and after more than 10 years I finally tried Harmony. This particular reskin of Doom was explicitly made to be a love letter to the Doom clones of the 90s. In fact, it is almost free Doom, with every enemy being an analogue to Doom, but unlike free Doom, there are smaller alterations to combat mechanics. For example, the Cyber Demon replacement only fires twice. The art style is also different, with the enemies having a claymation feel to them, in addition to just looking weird, not only because they are hideous mutants. In fact, they kind of remind me of the unit portraits of Cantata without the garish colours. And finally, Harmony has one of those early realistic Doom level designs with bathrooms and nightclubs and factories and crawling through air ducts. It certainly was an interesting trip down the Doom history lane. Serithus.
Alright, thank you very much, Serithus.
I have the Doom PC port on through Steam. I don't think it's installed on this PC. I remember installing it at some point.
I'm going to be very eager to look at Darkness Overloading. I liked Kingdom of Loathing, even though it is very, very basic. It's basically a browser game with everything's in text and the occasional picture. But it's also a game about, like, cowboy clowns trying to take over the world or some nonsense like that. It's a game that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, and it's great. West of Loathing is that, except it's a kind of a side-scrolling click-on-things em-up. Set in the same universe where everything is Western-themed. You use just random bits of meat that are pulled out of the ground as currency. You can ride around on a, let's just call it a defective horse. and you can cast magic through the power of beans. So there's that. They're complete nonsense, and they're great.
I see.
Yeah, don't think, just accept. Oh, some of the stuff you can find in Kingdom of Loathing, it's just... Every time you turn around the corner, there's something new and completely weird and bizarre.
I don't see it all. I'm
And
just
it's
nodding my
usually
head
a pun.
like I do.
It's usually a pun. So yeah, great games. Go check them out if you can. Kingdom of Loathing is free. You can just go into your browser, slap that into it, and away you go. Oh. Well, there's an option. Is that part of my ideology?
What?
I'm not going to say that on stream.
Where?
I can arrange a certain type of party. A very adult party.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
The one where
Oh,
pants
why?
are mandatorily gone.
Oh, like the ones advertised in Gridon, you got it.
Yeah, those ones. So
Why does nobody ever advertise anything in Gridania as being G-rated?
No, they're all... we got a DJ, LGBTQ plus friendly, etc.
Yeah, I don't think...
I want one of them to advertise that's LGBT plus unfriendly. I've never seen that before.
I haven't either.
I want to see it.
Just to see what happens. I mean, can you imagine the screaming?
Oh, they'd probably get reported to CMs. Or GMs.
So, anyway. So yeah, the Loathing games I'm definitely willing to check out. Is it going to be on Steam? I should check that out. As for the Cthulhu, here it is. I just went into Steam. It's right there, front page. $25. I don't know. West of Loathing is also, I believe, on sale at the moment. Oh no, it's not, but it is cheap.
It'd better be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not exactly like the most high budget game ever made.
It's black and whites and lines and stick figures. You gotta survive until the cows come home. It's made very clear very early on that these are horrendous demon cows. And when they come
have any
home,
intention
they
of
eat
coming home?
everybody.
Oh, okay, so they are trying to come home after all.
Or something like that. So yeah, that's basically the apocalypse at that point. Very, very silly game. As for the Cthulhu Saves the World guys, they haven't made anything in a while, so it's interesting to see them just pop up again.
Is that RPG Maker one?
It is. It's a very, very simple RPG about, Cthulhu, who gets caught up in some shenanigans and ends up saving the world.
Mm-hmm.
Not
I think I
really
remember
through
that
any
one.
fault of his own. It just kind of happens, and he just gets dragged along with things. Again, very silly game. I honestly have nothing to say about Doom, unfortunately.
Yeah, I haven't played any of the add-ons that he's talking about.
Yeah.
I don't. I feel like I need to be more knowledgeable on Doom to properly engage with the content Serathis provides us with, but I don't spend a lot of time playing Doom. Playing Doom is sort of like every couple of years I'll reinstall Doom and play it, rather than a ongoing pastime of mine. I was never much good at it anyway.
No, but it's still fun to dust it off every now and again.
I still haven't even played the 2016 one, even though everybody says it's really great.
I think I've got it sitting there to play in some form or another.
Yeah, I sort of wrote Doom off back when Doom 3 came out, and I hated it.
Yeah.
It felt like some sort of wannabe a survival horror game or something.
I should have read the description of this ceremony before, but apparently everybody's just standing around looking at their logs.
Can Steam hear me? Because it just recommended me RimWorld, but I don't own any games like RimWorld.
Probably. I wouldn't be scrap surprised if there is some sort of thing going on there. It's a bit odd that West of Loathing, Kingdom of... Oh, what is it? The Loathing games turned up for me. Like, if we're talking about playing Doom 2016, I wonder if I click on it now, and we're going to the store page. No, Shadows over Loathing still. But Cultic is there. Which is... Yeah, it's closer to Quake, I guess. But anyway. Anyway, do we have anything else?
We got... No, not for personal stuff, for generic stuff. I think we just got the news left.
Alright. I don't think there's a whole lot of that either.
Is.
So we got the Nepotism Awards, by the way, coming up on December 8th. Which is in 4 weeks. 5 by the time we get to the show for it.
Yep. So that'll be nice to go through.
Will it? What if he brings Sonic Fox on stage?
I'm being
Or
sarcastic.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
It'll be a nightmare to go through, and we're all going to be dead tired by the end of it.
Oh yeah, because usually every year it's been some degree of pain. Although
Sonic Fox.
thankfully I think they did learn their lesson after Sonic Fox. I still demand the implementation of the 40s style shepherd's crook. That'd make it so much more fun to watch.
Yeah.
And possibly break a few vertebrae as well.
Yeah, at least we won't have to put up with Disco Elysium winning anything.
Yeah.
Since they appear to have completely imploded as a development team.
Yeah. Disco Elysium, I've still got to play it. Apparently it's still a very great game. But the team just self-destructed.
Well, of course they self-destructed. They were all...
Yeah.
They were all communists engaged in an explicitly capitalist enterprise.
Yeah,
they succeeded at a capitalistic enterprise.
Yes, which then caused them to completely implode as a team because they're all greedy.
Yeah, that team. Oh boy.
Oh boy. But from what I understand, a lot of that at least stayed clear of the game. So,
the game is sort of supposed to be an anti-capitalist critique in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but when have they ever actually been? Like, you see people set out to make some sort of anti-capitalist critique, and then they almost always end up being pro-capitalist.
Well, it's a game that is supposed to be explicitly political, and I don't know anything about how they have expressed that though.
Yeah.
Like most communists, they can't do anything that's disconnected from their political activism. So.
Yeah, there's a reason games should not be political. I'm not going to say games can't be political. They can, but they shouldn't be. Because it dates them, among other reasons.
Well, the thing is that there's this bizarre conflation between games having political themes and games being political. Like, the elements they attempted to introduce into Disco Elysium were not designed to be political themes so much as they were designed to influence people to think in a particular way, because their games are part of their activism. No communist does anything that's not part of their activism. So it is perfectly all right for there to be political themes in a game, because politics is simply the mechanism by which the polis cooperates. That's the purpose of it. Is there needs to be when people live together, there needs to be a means of the management of the living together, because when people butt up against each other, it causes friction, and there needs to be some framework within which that takes place in order to prevent everybody murdering everybody else.
Yeah.
But games that are designed to serve the function of propaganda invariably just end up being a preachy mess. It's the same as go woke, go broke. Like, as soon as people feel in their gut that they're being preached to, their affinity for the product will go down because
Oh.
they don't like being told what to think.
They just
Which is
tune
why
out.
propaganda historically in the early stages of propagandization has had to be artful and subtle. But usually that stage doesn't last all that long, since the true purpose of propaganda is to isolate and humiliate as soon as they've got a toehold.
All right. What news articles does we have?
Well, the big bombshell that everybody was talking about this week was the open statement issued on I think it was on Medium by what's his name, Mick Gordon, the guy who did the composition for Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal.
Right, I tried to go through this, but it was such a wall of text.
Well, I mean, I can't blame him for writing a wall of text. I didn't go through the wall of text because the estimate from Medium is it would take an hour to read if all you did was just read it.
Yeesh.
But he was obliged to make this statement because he was basically being actively slandered by Marty Stratton of Bethesda. Was it Bethesda? No, I think Marty Stratton's just at the id level, the id Software level. But basically, the story went out a while back. We talked about it on the show, and it was basically it had painted Mick Gordon as being responsible for pretty much the catastrophe, like the mediocrity of the music in Doom Eternal compared to Doom 2016, and the catastrophic poor sound engineering quality and mixing quality of the OST that was released for Doom Eternal compared to the very well liked 2016 one. It turns out that there's another side to this story that Mick Gordon sort of feels like he's been forced to publish now due to the intransigence of Marty Stratton in negotiation. Basically, well, it's very much a case of he said, she said, as it were. There's not really any way for the onlooker to determine in an objective way which is true. But Mick Gordon's account has more of a ring of truth to it. It has more of a smell of truth to it than the statements that were issued by Marty Stratton on the topic. And honestly, mostly it makes Marty Stratton sound a lot like, what's his name? The Gearbox guy.
That
Randy
guy.
Pitchford.
That guy.
Yeah, it makes him seem a lot like Randy Pitchford. But at any rate, Mick Gordon's take on the matter is that he was essentially being asked to do the impossible, and he was excessively cooperative with them, but then they treated him like shit for it.
Sounds like a very common story, that one.
Now, I didn't read his Wallow text, so I only know the rough outline of the story that I've picked up osmotically through other people talking about it. But the gist seems to be essentially that Mick Gordon's original soundtrack for Doom 2016 was extremely successful, and they gave him the contract for Doom Eternal, but the way they organised the project was basically impossible to do. He was expected to score a certain amount of music at a certain pace over a certain amount of time. You can tell that I don't know the details because I'm not giving any specifics here. But basically, for instance, the levels for which he would be scoring exploration and combat music and so on had not been made yet. And there was only like really crude pre-alpha representations of what the content would actually be like.
Ooh,
And
okay.
so based on sort of like the early rough outline of gameplay, they insisted that that Mick Gordon somehow composed the music starting very early on in the project. And while he put up a fight against this, they wouldn't bend on it, and eventually he caved and agreed that he would give it the old college try. And this went on for a while, but you know, of course, by the time the final product came out, it wasn't just not very good, to be honest, because he didn't have the right information to work with to do a good job of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would ask for revisions and whatnot. But it turns out that over the course of this whole time, it was all ended up doing. He had delivered on a monthly basis or something, like 2 tracks a month was the pace that he was asked for. Or no, 2 levels worth of scoring a month, which is a very, very brisk pace to work at for most composers.
Yes.
But he agreed to do it, and he managed to just barely uphold it. And then they started asking for revisions because they had actually completed the level and they decided they didn't really like how it played out in terms of the music. So he was then asked to do revisions of these, and all at the same time he's on this incredibly tight schedule already that he's barely keeping up with because it's basically unreasonable. And it turns out during this entire time, despite all the deliverables he'd pushed through, he wasn't being paid. And they kept making up excuses and delaying his pay, and basically things got increasingly tense, and eventually they caved and did give him some money, I think, and then they basically got even more scrotty with him over the course of time, and basically the relationship worsened and worsened and worsened. And then when the game was going to come out, the marketing material advertised that the collector's edition would come with an OST by Mick Gordon, you know, the acclaimed creator of the soundtrack to Doom 2016, and this was the first that he'd heard of it. That there was an OST coming out, and they hadn't offered him the contract at all. And when he asked about it, they refused to give him the contract. They were just going to mix something together and release it under his name.
Ooh, that's a no-no.
Well, the thing is that they have legal loopholes through which they can do this, because
yes,
once he gives them the work that they've paid for, it becomes their product.
Yeah,
and he's the one that's credited with it. So but the thing is, he managed to convince them to give him the contract, I think. But then what they demanded of him were like 10 tracks in some unreasonable time frame, and he managed to actually almost deliver it, but he was granted an extension of a few hours because he was sort of like 2 tracks away from finishing, and then eventually the relationship imploded again, and what they ended up releasing was something that they'd slapped together in-house from a whole bunch of material that Mick had sent them over the course of the project, which meant that there was a lot of stuff that was unfinished and never intended to see the light of day. All now under his name, with in addition because he'd sent like demonstration loops and that sort of thing to them, and a lot of the stuff was like, say, this was inspired by this track from this other Doom game as an homage, but because they just slapped it together, the people involved in that project weren't credited and things like that. The whole thing was a disaster, and eventually they made a statement saying that it was entirely Mick Gordon's fault. They wanted to fob the blame off on him. He was uncooperative, he was behind schedule, etc., etc. And this was a story that went out to the press. And apparently after this was all announced, Stratton offered Mick a 6-figure sum to just accept all of the blame and never speak of it again, bound by legal non-disclosure, to never disclose what actually happened.
Ooh, yeah, okay.
The entire thing was executed in order to basically put Mick Gordon's reputation up on the altar as a sacrifice to preserve Stratton's reputation, because Stratton had masterminded this whole colossal failure. So yeah, that's sort of the rough outline of it. And basically, at this point, Gordon's had it up to here with it, and which is why he's gone public, even though he didn't really want to. He would have liked for it to blow over, but he's suffered severe reputational damage to his career as a result of having this OST that is a complete pile of garbage released under his name.
Yeah, that sort of thing, if it's on your record, it's going to stay there, whether you want it to or not. So, Yeah, crap
Yeah, so
work and
basically
this drama will follow you.
it's a long string of troubled and mismanaged development resulting in poor execution of the scoring process, and all of this being scapegoated on one person who was basically not being cooperated with in such a way as that they could actually do their job. So while basically the way it's presented by Mick Gordon presents a timeline and details that sound credible, much more credible than the Reddit posts that were made by Stratton. And Bethesda tried to mediate this, apparently, according to Gordon. And Bethesda actually managed to negotiate with Gordon an equitable arrangement to smooth this over and get a proper OST out there to replace the one that was in place. But from Gordon's account, it sounds like Stratton just threw a tantrum and dug his heels in. Jeez. And refused to cooperate, just period end. So no, there's no reconciliation here, type of thing.
Even though it's entirely his fault.
Well, I mean, he doesn't think it's his fault. He's not going to take responsibility for it.
Of course not.
He has people for that. So yeah, the whole thing as presented by Gordon makes Stratton look like 100% the villain in this case. It's entirely his fault for completely dicking over the management of his project. So there's not really any way of knowing whether either side is representing the truth or whether the truth lies between the two.
But Mick has a lot more links than his.
Yeah, that's the thing. Mick Gordon presented receipts. Like, he has evidence and a timeline that makes sense. He could be skewing things in his favour, maybe even subconsciously. But Stratton has not defended himself. He has just thrown a tantrum. Repeatedly.
Not a good
when
look.
Bethesda negotiated to have Stratton's Reddit posts about what an evil person Gordon was taken down, but when Reddit did take it down for them, Stratton threw a tantrum and objected, and basically took it personally, like, yeah, you're calling me a liar. Blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
So it seems like Stratton has just been a tantruming child throughout the entire proceedings of this. As just a spectator, it's hard to draw any conclusions, but I think that most people who investigate the matter will draw the conclusion that Stratton was at fault. But when the story broke months and months and months ago, everybody thought it was Mick Gordon's fault because the information control was in Stratton's hands and it released the statements. So the damage is already done. Like, if Gordon didn't want all this to just blow over, I think he's probably got a reasonable court case that he could bring on this, because he suffered material damage, very material damage to his reputation as a result of this. But I think he just wants to see the back of it. He said that he's moved on to, he will never work with them again. He's moved on to other projects that have been much more rewarding and less stressful. So, I mean, I wish him all the best, because it sounds like he had a shit time. But and I haven't played Doom 2016, but metalheads seem to really like the music he did for it.
Yeah,
so
I'm not a metalhead, and I still like the music from it. It's good blood pumping music for killing demons.
That's what you want.
Yeah, so this is a pretty big story that broke this week, and there's lots of people telling it. So if you look around online, you can probably see the major talking heads on YouTube who like to cover the video game news will probably have a good breakdown for it, rather than my rather sloppy outline that I've just given. But yeah, it's just games industry drama, more or less, and another reminder that even if you think that, oh well, it's coming from the official media people at id, it's probably not a bald-faced lie. There's a good chance that it's still a bald-faced lie, because there's no reason to believe that a company is going to be any more honest than an individual person that you don't know.
How come with all the artsy-fartsy types, it seems like whenever there's a conflict with a composer or any music individual who's in charge of the music for production in the company, the music guy is usually just trying to do his job?
Well, the thing is that in the games industry, most of the people who are the big muckety mucks in the games industry their formative years, if they came up through the games industry, and a lot of those higher ups will, some of them have just come in from legal, but some of them have been in the industry a long time. Their formative years were during the graphics race, where the only thing that mattered was graphics. A lot of Western games were like this. They prioritize graphics far, far above music. That's why if you look in the East, where a lot of the sort of big name content with the big name JRPGs, the music and the scores, the OSTs, they have always been big selling products for a very, very long time. That really hasn't been true in the West until quite recently, relatively speaking, because music was often sort of held as being a very secondary aspect of the game. Like, nobody talks about how great the Modern Warfare soundtrack was.
I didn't even know
generally
it had a soundtrack.
speaking. Historically, there've been a few that are very well liked.
Yeah.
The original Doom soundtrack was very highly praised. The Quake soundtrack was very highly praised. But generally speaking, music composition in games during the 90s and early 2000s was sort of mostly not held to be that important of a facet of the process.
If you remember when Total Annihilation rocked around, its soundtrack was a big deal because they used an actual orchestra.
Yeah, so a lot of these people will have been formed at the time where the sound department was sort of just not an important thing, whereas in Japan particularly, the culture there has maintained being a musician as a proper vocation rather than it's in the West. It's a lot of musicians are people who were musicians as part of a band or whatever in the pop culture and liked music enough to make it their career. So they go from being like a band in their teens and early 20s who doesn't make it because almost no band do, and then they become a studio musician providing musical material for various purposes as a career. Whereas it's much more a cultural institution in Japan to go and study music as a vocation, and then you do musical work as your job, as a career that grows out of that. Especially this is the case because it's considered to be, along with the visual arts, these artistic things are considered to be proper and appropriate traditional vocations for women, which meant that's just part of why there's always been such a strong strain of women in the video games industry in Japan compared to the West, because there was this part of the industry that was already interlaced with what was considered an appropriate career traditionally for women. So music didn't get displaced as unimportant in favor of graphics. Like, if you're looking at like big graphical advancements in gaming technology, you don't find them coming out of Japan. That's typically not what happens. They all occur in the West because they were, monomaniacally focused on the next big graphics upgrade. And you still see that to some extent. Like, it's always games like Battlefield and that are used to sell graphics advancements.
Mm-hmm.
But that just isn't the development culture that existed contemporaneously in Japan. So I think the reason why the musician always seems to be just trying to get along while the greater company dumps on them is simply because there is this heritage of being regarded as an unimportant facet of game development that still needs to sort of be excised. I think that that thinking will dissipate rather rapidly over the course of the next few years, provided that the world doesn't devolve into Mad Max in the next few years, because graphics advancements is basically dead in the water at this point. Like, I really don't think that there's actually any need for a graphics card better than a 3070.
Like, I think you were pushing it well before the 3070.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, I picked that one because it's the one I just bought. There's not a special need for it. Like I said, my R9 380X that I've been using for the last 7 years before I got a new graphics card was still working for Elden Ring.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have that many problems with it. I only got another one because I wanted to have my computer future-proofed against total economic collapse. But I think that because we've hit this graphical wall where people can't really sell a game on the basis of claiming that it's got some massive new graphical improvement, and the upper tiers of graphics card are only needed for rendering at 4K, something that most people just don't have a 4K monitor. I only have a 1080p monitor. Most people who are gamers don't really care to go much above 1440p. The 4K contingent is quite small, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
A lot of enthusiasts have the delusional idea that it's much larger than it is, or that it will become much larger than it is. But the closeness with which you have to sit to a screen in order to see the difference is pretty insane.
Yeah.
I think that because graphics as a pure aspect of technology, and in general the pure technological aspect of the game, is not going to be as valuable to push it aggressively, there's going to be a fallback to the position of placing more emphasis on general execution and atmosphere in a lot of game types, which is going to mean that music is going to be more important, especially as you see sort of like breakout hits in the West have occurred. Like the first one that I have like recent memory of that was really sort of shook things up was Bastion. Really made a name for itself based purely on music and sound design and narration. It was all the sound is what made that game. The graphics were nice, like the artistry was nice, and it was really the artistry, not the graphics, that was nice about it visually. But the sound design really sold it.
Yeah. Gameplay-wise, Bastion was fairly mediocre.
It was decent.
It was decent.
It was serviceable. It did the job.
It did the job. But
it was about the atmosphere. It was about what that game was as a whole.
It ended up being a piece of art.
Yeah, the whole product came together to be something that was memorable and made a lot of waves as a result. That's going to be the tack that I think developers are going to have to take going forward, because you just simply can't push one aspect of your technology anymore. I mean, if you look at the games that are real juggernauts for reasons other than pure gambling, like loot box gambling, you mainly have things that are like FF14, where the sound design is such an incredibly interwoven part of the entire experience. Like, big games don't happen that much anymore, like, which seems like a strange thing to say, but a lot of new stuff that comes out doesn't really leave a mark anymore.
No, it really doesn't.
And I think that that's because a lot of developers don't know what to do to really capture the imagination of the audience, because they've been focusing on technology in the industry for so long, and now that's just a dead letter.
Yeah, every now and again you'll get a game that comes along which is just a bolt of lightning and everyone's on board with it. But
if I look at like the people that talk to me are all excited about Darktide, and nobody's excited about Darktide because of the graphics. They're all excited because of the setting and the opportunity to play with friends. It's about what the game is as a product that is what is exciting people, not anything that the game does with its technology.
Yeah.
And so how well it sells itself as a like gestalt experience is what will determine that game's success, and it's what people are excited for. People are not excited for Modern Warfare 2 being remade.
No, nobody gives a toss about that.
That just came out recently, and I haven't seen anybody talking about it, and I haven't seen anybody playing it.
Oh, it came out? Okay.
I think it came out.
Yeah, it's out.
Alright.
It came out for 120 New Zealand dollars.
Ugh. And that's just the thing, is you got those big games, and once you strip away their ability to sell based on purely on graphics or advanced technology, what else have they got?
I mean, they're going to get their normie contingent of people that always buy it.
Yeah, they got their normies, and that's it.
That's it. Right now, it's sitting at a mixed 56% on Steam.
So complete apathy.
Yeah, given if you take away the hate votes that are going to vote negative without even looking at it, because Call of Duty, probably just people don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and most of the positive reviews seem to be saying, "I remember Modern Warfare 2."
Yeah, let's see. It's a fresh release, and it's in 4th place on top games by current players.
Yeesh.
Despite having just come out. It's behind the perennial leader, Counter-Strike Global Offensive. It's behind Dota 2. It's behind Lost Ark.
It's behind Lost Ark. Oh, wow.
Just barely ahead of Apex Legends and PUBG.
To be fair, Lost Ark has boobies.
Lost Ark does have boobies. The thing which amazes me the most, to be totally honest, is the fact that New World is still hanging on at 8.
Yeah, it's got its die-hard followers now. They've apparently fixed up, well, some of the issues.
Yeah, but more importantly, maybe this isn't more important, but in my gut it feels more important, that Modern Warfare 2 basically didn't make a dent on any of the peak play record.
Yep.
At all. Like, if you look at it's a fresh release, but if you look at like the top ones, you've got like PUBG that has really high peak players, Lost Ark has really high peak players, Counter-Strike, Dota, Elden Ring, New World, Cyberpunk, Apex Legends, Valheim, Terraria. They all have huge peak players. Like when you're talking about maximum peak enthusiasm from people to play the game, that's what you want to be looking at, and it just doesn't scratch it. It doesn't scratch it at all. Like the highest peak that they managed to hit was 262,000.
That Terraria is still up there. That game is, what, 12 years old now?
Well, we're talking about peak of all time.
Okay.
That was in May 2020.
Right. Even so, it was 10 years old at that point. But
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, just no one cares. No one cares. It exists.
Yeah, like it's just not like the average engagement with Call of Duty is 133,000 over the past month or so.
That's
But
pretty piddly numbers, but that's
not great. Considering how expensive it looks like that game was to make. Even though it's just a remake, they would have spent an enormous amount of time grooming the graphics, because graphics is all that has.
Yeah. To be fair, a bulk of the Call of Duty player base is on console rather than PC, or rather Steam, but even so, that is still a...
Yeah, I mean...
But wouldn't that be a release on a limited... kind of, I don't know what platforms it was released on, but if it's being sold on being a graphical update, isn't it going to be on the next gen consoles? The current, like the PS5, what is the Xbone called again?
The Xbox. Series
that.
X. I don't know what they ended up calling it, because you got like...
Nobody cares about it, because you can just play just as easily on a PC.
Yeah, if you want to play with Xbox, you go play on the PC. But
yeah, the console's kind of redundant now.
Yeah.
But the thing is that's true of most games, like, that they have access to a console market as well.
Yeah.
Like, there's only a few exceptions like Dota and CSGO. But
yeah, there is still an argument to be made for consoles, but by and large, just go play on the PC.
Well, Sony is trying to make it, and they're really suffering for doing it.
Yeah.
Like, because they really, really want to live in that classic model world.
Yeah.
Where everything is about the juggernaut AAA Hollywood blockbuster style game.
Yeah, Microsoft meanwhile has embraced the modern trend where it's, hey, play it the way you want. Here's a console. It's convenient.
More to the point, here's a subscription service.
Well, yeah, there's that too, which is actually good value.
Unlike the Sony one, which appears to be getting worse by the day.
Yeah, I've not seen anyone really enthused about the Sony one.
More and more, Sony gives me the sort of image of a bunch of totally disconnected suits making all the calls.
Yep.
Because there's simply no way that you can understand the situation on the ground and then lowball your offering on PSN as much as they have against Microsoft.
Yeah.
Like, they spend all of their time worrying about undervaluing the products on their platform and none of their time worrying about expanding the install base of their platform. It's really concerning.
I just don't think they've got any idea what they're actually doing anymore.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I think that's true of a lot of the industry right now. Like, everybody knows that the world is on the financial precipice, either consciously or unconsciously, and everybody knows that there's a shortage of raw materials to increase install bases of any kind, and everybody knows that, you know, there's clearly some sort of paradigm shift is waiting in the wings to come on stage, and we don't know exactly when or what will happen once it does.
Mm-hmm.
Like, basically, VR is dead now. Like it died the death, more or less.
Got too expensive.
Yeah, like
Too
because
expensive.
the new one from Facebook, I don't know who they're selling it under. Maybe
The
Meta.
Meta Quest 3 or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
it's called.
They announced a legendarily expensive piece of hardware.
Yes.
The new PSVR 2 has been announced at a price point that puts it way out of most people's strike zone. Like they basically have gone back to VR is only for rich people, which wasn't the direction that they needed to go. So VR is now a dead letter for another 5-10 years.
Yeah.
Like they keep doing this. This has been the story of VR since I first tried it back when I was 12 years old.
Yeah. Mind you.
Oh well, it's going to have a boom, and then everybody's going to realize it doesn't work, and it's going to go on ice for another 10 years.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. Did you see the? I think in the last week, there's been pictures floating about of what Meta's metaverse actually looks like now.
I've seen a little bit. I haven't looked closely at it, but I've seen a little bit of that material in passing. But more importantly, have you seen what the layoffs graph looks like?
Oh, delicious.
Yeah, something like 50% of their employees got axed or something.
Yeah, because it was a very high amount. It was a very, very high amount.
Something like 10.
They did
10,000. Or one.
Yeah, I think it was nearly 50% of their team that were working on that. It was a halving action.
When the product they are pushing forward as the future of the internet looks like something that the Nintendo 64 would be ashamed of. You got issues.
This seems like a tech bro who doesn't know what he's talking about and has more dollars than cents, basically.
Yeah, they Ready Player One and decided that that's what they wanted.
I refuse to believe that nobody told Zuckerberg that he was onto a loser. Because it's very, very clear that from inside their teams, they were having to force their employees to work on it and to use it.
Even the most ardent yes man would have been trying to steer him away from it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't remember who it was. I saw a video somebody was talking about it. I can't remember. I think it might have been Michael Bell was talking about it. Somebody said that his impression of it was that that Zuckerberg had seen the movie Ready Player One and thought it was a great idea. And
he
set
saw
out
the
to make
movie
it.
version. That's even worse.
Yeah, the book's already a hot mess.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he used the movie or the book in the example. For some reason, I'm remembering it as him saying the movie, but regardless, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, nobody wants to live in Ready Player One, do they?
No. We've had that technology for years. We could have made something similar to it, except for the full immersion bit. But we don't, because using a window is easier.
You see, the thing is that Zuckerberg thinks that it's actually a good thing. That he wants everybody to live in the cyber dystopia.
So he can scan their brain and market to them directly to their neocortex.
The thing is that I don't feel like Zuckerberg himself is one of these malicious people. Like, I don't think that he's like Bill Gates, who is just evil, or Klaus Schwab, who is just evil. I think that he's just like a dumb nerd.
He's a lizard man. He doesn't understand normal people.
Well, aside from being a lizard man, he's been here a long time. He must be naturalized by now.
No.
Well, I don't know whether lizardmen come from the center of the earth or from space, or both. And I certainly don't know which clan Zuckerberg is from. But he's been around a long time. You would think he would have sort of got the rough gist of humanity by now.
You'd think so.
Maybe it was too cold in the office and his blood flow just wasn't getting all the way to his brain.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just that the lizard brain doesn't work well depending on the climate. Energy is getting more and more expensive and winter is coming. So maybe we'll just see him get more and more brainlet as time goes on and the temperature drops.
Oh, this is getting silly. Okay.
Is it really?
No, it's probably got as much merit as anything that Facebook's done over the last 10 years.
My theory about the theory that Aristotle has proposed about the reason why Meta is terrible, is that really any less credible than the idea that Meta was a good idea?
Oh, absolutely not. Anyway, do we have anything else, or should we just get out of here?
There's a couple small things that tangent off of what we were just talking about.
All right.
So, one that directly tangents off of it is it says Nintendo Switch is considering a price increase, but apparently this isn't off the table for any of the major game companies, despite their products already being in the iffy price range in today's economy.
I thought Sony already increased theirs.
Yeah, Sony might have already increased theirs.
So yeah, well, Sony, given the opportunity to raise prices, will raise prices.
Well, yeah, but there's also raw materials are a huge problem right now.
Yeah.
Because you need to haul them out of the ground, process them, and ship them, and then construct your device. And that is very, very difficult to do in the current energy economy.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things require diesel fuel, and there is not enough of it to go around, and what is going around is very expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, like just to process copper takes a ridiculous amount of money, a humongous amount of money. And this is the drum that I bang every time somebody brings up sodding wind farms, is that each one of those turbines requires like roughly 4 tons of the highest purity copper that industry can produce. And the amount of energy in terms of raw fossil fuels that has to go in to dig up that copper, to smelt that copper, to move that copper around, like it's a huge amount of energy required to produce that copper. And your wind turbine is not going to be able to pay that off. Your average PlayStation has a big chunk of copper in it.
Yep,
As
it
part
does.
of the attempt to keep that enormous jet engine cool. And it's true that in subsequent SKUs they've replaced a huge amount of it with aluminium, which is the second best option in most cases, both in fact for conductivity processes and heat transfer processes, although performance of aluminium is only like 60% of what copper's is, even at high purity.
Yeah,
But,
it's a big jump, but it's also a lot cheaper.
Yeah, you just need a lot more of it. So is it going to be cheaper in the long run? Hard to say.
Hard to say.
Depends on, ultimately it might depend on the actual finitude of the supply that we have access to. Like, are we going to discover enough copper veins to continue to cover it? I mean, when electricity became a thing, we covered the entire world in copper wire in order to get the entire world electrified as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the copper in the crust of the earth is already spoken for.
I'm living in one of the richest copper regions in the world, and there's, I think we got, let me think, 8 currently functioning copper mines within our radius, and 4 exploration teams.
But I mean, if the entire Western world is buying into this green energy insanity, and you're going to need something like 3 to 4 times as much copper as is already in the world, already in use in the world, in order to build enough infrastructure to go green.
Yeah.
Which means that you're going to need to expend an awful lot of fossil fuels in order to get your turbines up. My goodness.
Yeah, but it's not about, saving the world or anything like that. It's about money.
Like you simply can't do it. Like these are not practical possibilities. The amount of money required to be put in is astronomical beyond anything that anybody has conceived of before.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very silly, and the fact is that these things are still happening, which are going to put huge strains on supply. And these huge strains on supply are going to affect every industry that needs electronic parts, and the games industry is no exception. Not least the high technology electronics industry that needs copper for heatsink purposes, because in that case there's a little bit less processing required because you can use chunks of it, but there's still, in terms of volume, a lot of copper required for those purposes. So we're going to see the cost of all consumer electronics go up steadily over the course of time, and until such time as basically the current order of climate cultists basically dissipates, because it's not sustainable anyway. So it's going to wear out. It's just a question of whether it'll wear out within a practical span of time, or whether we will be dead before it happens.
Yeah, only time will tell.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's everything.
Yeah, I put that Final Fantasy 16 is going to be a timed exclusive on PS5. It's surprisingly shorter than I thought it would be, only 6 months.
Well, on one hand, they are desperate to increase the install base for a device that nobody needs or wants, and on the other hand, they actually want to sell the game. So the compromise is that they need to have a short exclusivity to move as many consoles as they can sell to people who are desperate but haven't bought into the console yet. Versus, we know that the bulk of the player base just wants to play the game, and some of them are willing to wait because everybody is oversaturated right now. And now that everybody's not locked in their houses, they can't just play video games all day. People are backlogged all the way back. So,
yep, got a whole Steam list of stuff to play.
Yep.
Just gotta pick what I'm in the mood for and boot it up. There's so many I could install.
Same here. No, I'm making no progress because I'm so tragically in love with playing FF14 right now. But sitting at the top of the list is probably the Nier games. They're probably what's going to come up next, unless I get smashed, in which case it might be Revengeance.
I think it should be Revengeance.
Are you in the mood to meme?
Well, the problem with Revengeance is that it's I have to be very, very satisfied with the my controller's cooperation with my PC, and I don't know how long it's going to take me to get there.
Oh, it needs a resolution fix for 14. You think it has a 1080p option, so I think you're okay.
All right.
I don't think you got to go down to one of the jank forums and get the we swear this is not spyware add-on to make it play in the right resolution.
Yeah, but at any rate, I have many games to play, many games to play, and so does everybody else. Like, nobody's really there's been a boom in the industry, and even if it looks like it's dying, there's been a boom in the industry over the course of the past decade or so, full of quality games I've had no time to touch. So even though nothing new worth a damn seems to be coming out, there's still no shortage of stuff to play. There's no need for me to buy a ridiculous piece of hardware to play a game that's going to be on one of the platforms that I play within 6 months. So
yeah.
It'll all come to PC eventually. Just give it time. You wait long enough, the emulator will get made.
So
it may take a decade, but it'll get there.
All right, let's get out of here, shall we?
All right. Closing comments, and I'll get us out of here.
I'm enjoying actually having time. I'm waiting to see what goes wrong.
Everything is already going wrong for me. I'm just trying to hold the car on the road at this point.
All right. Oh, Bayonetta 3. I'll probably come back next week with my conclusions on it. I've only got a little bit more to go, and I'll talk about the conclusion of my journey to platinum that game and the Rodan fight. And then I can put that one aside. I might go back to Bayonetta 1 afterwards, just to remind myself why I thought this franchise had potential.
Yeah,
got it on PC. So I have reinstalled it. I did boot it up to get the controls rejiggered. You see, on PC, there's the wonderful option called the Steam Controller Config. And if you go in there and muck with the settings, you can do things like turn your left trigger into an auto turbo fire for all buttons. So no matter what the QuickTime sequence puts up that you're supposed to mash on, you're not going to kill your controller. You can just hold down the left trigger.
Ah, cheating. I like it.
Have you played Bayonetta 1?
I have, and my thumbs are still sore.
Do you remember all the mash X to not die sequences?
Oh, the mashing.
Do you remember how all the cutscenes are unskippable if they have a mash X to not die sequence?
Half the climaxes were press X or mash X to kill thing as well.
Yeah, and if you manage to fill up the meter, then you get the big Halo payout. But if you don't, you don't get it. So I don't feel like getting carpal tunnel. So yes, if you want to call that cheating, I'm cheating. I will happily make that macro because it has nothing to do with the actual gameplay of the game.
It does not. All right, do the thing.
All right, folks. We'll see you next week. Sayonara. Bye-bye.